Welcome to Fly World Aquatics. I'm your resident fly guy, Joe Cross, and on this channel, I show you how to keep your tank looking fly. So, let's get on something that I've been hearing a lot of things on the internet about, a lot of different videos on YouTube. A lot of people want to keep these guys back here behind me. They're called Discus. If you don't know anything about Discus fish, they are South American cichlids from the Amazon River, and they have your tank looking fly. But one of the things that deter people from keeping discus, one, they're not for novice fish keepers. You have to be an experienced fish keeper in order to keep discus fish. So there are a lot of questions that come up, like what water temperature, water parameters, and feeding. But what I really want to go over in this video right now is just feeding, because I'm hearing people talk about you got to feed them 6 and 7 different types of food. It's really not that complicated, if I'm being completely honest with you. If I'm going to start with what your main staple of feeding discus should be, it should be black worms. Okay. Now, getting a hold of live black worms could be a bit of a task. Luckily for me, I got a local fish store near me that constantly keeps me supplied with live black worms. But if you can't get a hold of live black worms, these baby right here on Amazon will have your fish looking right. There's all types of nutrients, color boosts in this. This right here is phenomenal. But getting back to the amounts and types of foods that you should be feeding, for me, it's black worms, brine shrimp, and beef heart should be your main 3 foods. Now, the beef heart, there's all different conflicting amounts. How many times a day, how many times a week you should feed beef heart. Me personally, I try to feed beef heart 3 to 4 times a week. And it all depends on, how much of it they had, and if they're if it feels like they're struggling with it, then I'll slow down a bit. But again, the brine shrimp, you can get live brine. That should be pretty easy to get from your local guys. But if you can't get it, Hikari makes a nice frozen brine you could give them. There's also the brine with the spirilla in it, and there's also like baby brine you can buy that are frozen. So again, you don't need 8 different foods to feed your discus. You just got to make sure you keep your main thing. The best thing for them, though, again, is the black worms. Live black worms preferably. I make sure that I mix the live black worms in with the freeze-dried black worms. I make sure that with each feeding, I give them black worms and the brine shrimp. And then when I feed beef heart, it's just beef heart for that feeding. The amounts of times a day that you feed your discus also are conflicting. Now, for me, when I'm growing out discus, which most of these in this tank behind me are grow outs, I try to feed this tank 4 to 6 times a day. I also have an adult discus tank that I feed 3 times a day. So discus need a lot of feedings. Most people get away with feeding once, maybe twice a day. That's not going to do it for your discus. At least 3 feedings a day. I mean, again, sometimes, when they reach a certain age, you might be able to get away with 2 times a day. But for me personally, I try to keep it to absolutely 3 times for the big guys, 4 to 6 for the grow outs. Now, again, getting back to the types of food. If you can't not get a hold of the live black worms, I'm telling you, you got to get those freeze-dried black worms that I showed you. Again, also, bloodworms is something you can mix in there. Some people are completely against bloodworms because they say they cause parasites. I've only had like 1 internal parasite issue in this tank here, never in the big tank. And I used to, when I first started, all I fed my discus were bloodworms. So I personally don't have an issue with the bloodworms. Hikari makes a nice frozen bloodworm. They make sure that they're parasite free. So you should not have any issues with internal parasites with the bloodworms. So again, we'll go over just what I went over with you. So again, if you want to keep discus, black worms, brine shrimp, beef heart are my main 3. And if you stick to those 3, good feedings, good quality beef heart. There's all different types of beef heart products out there. Also, if you want to get fancy with it, you can buy beef heart from the butcher. and blend it up yourself and freeze it, roll it out. That's what a lot of the big guys do. Also, if you go on a site like Discus, he has his own beef heart mix that he puts out. Chicago Discus, I know they put out a nice beef heart mix. Jack Watley Discus puts out beef heart, and Myrtle Beach Discus. Now, these are some of the biggest discus distributors in the game. So if this is what they're feeding, you should be feeding it as well. It'll help you if you don't have your own program, if you're just getting started. And I mean, personally, I've been keeping Discus for a while now. So, you know, I got my own program. I got my own way of doing things. And that's the most important thing in this hobby is you got to figure out what works for you. You can listen to what people say and you can begin to get your own program from it, but don't stay strictly to what other people are saying, because what works for them may not work for you. You got to figure out what works for you. So if what they're telling you to do doesn't work for you, don't get discouraged. Just keep going. That's part of the hobby, is trial and error and learning on the fly, learning experience. Discus are very expensive fish, so you kind of got to get in the groove early with them. But once you get it down, I mean, you pretty much will have your routine and you'll be keeping Discus successfully. So hopefully what I said is going to help you out if you want to get started. Maybe you already keep Discus and you're just trying to figure out what works for you and just trying to get some tips and some different tricks to do to help them get big. So with that being said, man, I appreciate y'all being here with me. Y'all could have been anywhere else in the world, but you was here with Fly World Aquatics. We appreciate you, man. Remember, cleanliness is next to godliness. We out.